Great. So I'm Ashton Anderson. And first of all, thanks for coming deep into the last session of the conference. So let me just jump right in. So this work started from the premise that the main program of AI so far has been to design algorithms that can match or even exceed human performance in a variety of contexts. Right? Like we want our algorithms to be better than us so that we can use them instead of us. And so indeed, one leading narrative for algorithms and machine learning for the past half century has really been humans versus machines. So at certain points in history, we pit the best humans in the world versus our best algorithms. And there's been certain watershed moments when our algorithms have actually proven that they have some kind of dominance over us in contexts that we care about. So chess and Go and trivia are certain very structured domains that actually very recently have kind of fallen towards the machine side. And this has, of course, led to speculation and questions to people like us over what's going to happen when robots take over the world. Let's not get into that just yet. Instead, my co-authors and I, in this paper, we want to make the observation that right now, at this point in the history of AI, we can really start to use this advance to begin asking a second type of question, which is now that once machines get, or the algorithms that we create become so much better than us in certain domains, we can actually aim them back towards ourselves and study human expert level decision making in the domains that these machines have mastered. So we want to make this jump from this one question that has been pervading AI for a long time, which is assessing the relative performance of humans and algorithms, and start asking a second type of question, which is using algorithm as lenses on the decision that humans make. So there's been a template for this kind of style of analysis that's just been starting the past year or two. People have studied judges making decisions about bail and doctors making near-term life expectancy decisions and loan officers. And the overarching motivating question for this kind of style of research, and in particular for this paper, is can we use algorithms to characterize and predict expert-level human error? So when do people make errors? And to study this, it's good and important to aim towards the things that those previous papers have been studying, like doctors, like medicine and law, and so on. But for this task, it'll help to have a model system. So we want a model system for studying human error that has certain properties. The first is we want some kind of task with lots of data on human decisions, so we can apply KDT-style analysis to try and learn about it. We want this task to be challenging for even skilled human decision makers, so that it's non-trivial. But far and away, the most important thing is we need the objective function to be clear, and the ground truth should be feasibly computable by an algorithm. So this last point is really what's held us from asking or answering this question in the past. And the recent advances in machine learning and AI have made it so that we can actually start asking this kind of question. So our model system is chess. And this should come as no surprise, really, because it's been a long-standing model system for decision-making in AI for at least the past 50 years, probably even longer. And it has the unique distinction of being called the Drosophila in two different areas. John McCarthy called it the Drosophila of AI all the way back in 1960. And Herb Simon, about a decade later, with his collaborator William Chase, called it the Drosophila of Psych. And they actually made some fundamental breakthroughs in how people think by studying chess. And just as a side note, you see John McCarthy and Herb Simon. For a long time, I mean, we forget it now, but for a long time, computer chess really kind of was AI. And that was how we measured our progress in AI, was by actually studying computer chess as a system. So in the picture, you see Magnus Carlsen on the right, who's the current world champion. He's like 25 years old, arguably the greatest player ever, playing Peter Svidler, who's another one of the world's greats at this moment. And they're engaged in a game of chess where every move is a cognitively challenging task. And every time they make a move, or anyone makes a move in chess, we have data on three really important things. We have the task instance. So in chess, we have the position on the board, and we know that's the complete decision environment that they're operating in. We have the time available to make the decision. So we know that when people are under time pressure, they make worse decisions, but we can study that in a data-driven way now. We are using chess. And finally, we have the skill of the decision maker. So as was mentioned in the first talk, the ELO rating, ELO system has been a widely accepted way of assigning scores to chess players. And as a chess player myself, I can attest to the fact that these ratings are actually amazingly accurate. Right. So we want to characterize when a player is likely to make a mistake, or to use the chess parlance, blunder. And the main question is, how can we do that? There are two main ways that machines are dominant over people. The first, as I mentioned, is just that they're better than us at every part of chess. So we could just run a chess program, and then whenever they disagree with the move that the humans played, we could call that a blunder. But there's a lot of conceptual difficulties wrapped up in that. So in this work, we actually make a further observation and point out that actually chess with 7 or fewer pieces is completely solved. We've now built up tablebases, which are really just databases that record every possible position, and they play perfectly according to that. And again, to talk about the pantheon of greats, Richard Bellman, this was his original idea. So this picture that I've shown you here is now further on in the game, same game between Magnus Carlsen and Peter Svidler. They're playing in a game, and now there's only 5 pieces left on the board, and this happens relatively often. And there are like literally textbooks and textbooks going back hundreds of years, or at least 100 years, trying to study how to play these kinds of chess positions. But now we can just look up in our table base what is the correct move to play, and how many moves is it going to take to checkmate the opponent king. So in this position, it was Magnus Carlsen with white move. He had 18 legal moves at his disposal. 9 of them led to a forced win for him, and 9 of them didn't. So we'd call those second 9 blunders and those first 9 non-blunders. He took his rook on g3 for people who know chess, and he moved it down 1 square. And for reasons that are really unfathomable to the human mind now, that was a blunder. So he made a mistake. This is hard for even the best chess players in the world. And our idea here is we're just going to say every move is a mistake or not according to this very strict definition. If you change the evaluation of the position to make it worse for you, then you've committed a blunder. And this is now an area of maybe the first area of like serious human thought. A lot of people have put devoted large parts of their lives to playing chess, and in particular this part of chess. And that has been completely, absolutely just obliterated by machines. So when people talk about machine superintelligence, you imagine that's still far away in the future. But if you want to study it, actually chess is a good place to study because it's an area of human interest that has now just been completely solved. So chess could be the Drosophila of machine superintelligence if you're interested in studying what happens to a field when machines start dominating. OK, so the data sets we're going to use for the rest of this talk come from 2 main sources. The first is called Fix for Free Internet Chess Server. It's a collection of 200 million games played online at very fast speeds. These are amateurs just kind of screwing around. They range in ELO from 1200 to 1800. 1200 is roughly the rating that you would expect the winner of a grade school chess tournament to have. 1800 already is quite strong. They would easily beat anyone who doesn't regularly play chess. Takes probably years to get to that level. And then we have a GM dataset, which is a separate dataset of about 1 million games played at international tournaments by the best players in the world over hours long. So these are very serious and, to them, very high stakes affairs. This includes like world championship games and so on. And those range in ELO rating between 2400 and 2800. 2400 is on the cusp of being like a professional player. And there's only, I think, 10 people in history who have ever crossed 2800. So these are very strong players. And the idea is to go through these games and only look at the positions where there were 6 or fewer pieces left on the board. We know in every possible case if the move they made was a blunder or not. And then we're going to study how the quality of human decisions varies with various characteristics of the position and of the people making the moves. So the first thing we can do is we can just look at the basic dependence on fundamental dimensions. So in chess, at least, we've identified the skill of the player, the time they had available to them, and the difficulty of the position to be the three main things that vary with that affect the quality of the moves. And you can imagine in other scenarios where this might start cropping up, where like this style of analysis might start cropping up, something similar might hold true. So you can imagine studying something like driving with dash cam footage and data from cars on what people did, doing this exact style of analysis. So first we can look at how in the empirical blunder rate, which is just the empirical fraction of blunders that people make, varies with things like skill and time. So on the left, we can see that the empirical blunder rate on the y-axis does indeed drop down. So people who are getting stronger and stronger as you go right in this graph are making better and better individual move level decisions. The worst players blunder about 10% of the time in our data, and the best players blunder about 6% of the time. So it almost drops by half. So there's a big difference in skill. And on the right, you can see that the time available to the decision maker does indeed matter a lot. As you get to the end of the game, you have about 10 seconds or less remaining. The error rate really starts to diverge. But what's interesting is you can see that the error rate actually flattens out pretty fast. So that's skill and time. And what about difficulty? So actually, it's somewhat hard to just take a chess position and say how difficult it is, especially because it's completely solved. So how difficult is it for a human decision maker is kind of a not well-defined thing. We do a simple thing of looking at the blunder landscape of a position. So like I mentioned before, whenever you make a move or whenever you're confronted with a chess position, there's a certain number of legal moves that you have to make, and some subset of them are blunders. So we can just look at how the empirical blunder rate varies in this landscape. And sure enough, close to the diagonal, where most of your moves become blunders that you shouldn't make, the empirical blunder rate gets worse. We can simplify this by just taking the fraction. So we call the blunder opportunity just the number of possible blunders over the number of legal moves. So going back to the example from before, since there were 9 blunders and 9 non-blunders, the blunder opportunity was exactly 1/2. And the first really surprising thing from this research was that the empirical blunder rate is incredibly regular in the blunder potential. So both in GM games, so Grandmaster games, and online amateurs, the blunder rate, it rises like pseudo-exponentially with the blunder potential. So a little bit of a difference in the difficulty of a position actually matters quite a lot, it seems. And I can't go into it now because of time, but we have a simple quantal response kind of model that actually characterizes when people are going to blunder as a function of how difficult the position they're in varies. So we can come to the main question that we want to ask in this kind of style of question, which is, can we use the fundamental dimensions as features to predict when someone is going to make a error? So we use the ELO rating of a player and their opponent, the time they have remaining, the blunder potential, and a set of features that encodes blunder potentials deeper in the tree. You can read the paper for that. You can also imagine asking this exact question in other domains. So for example, driving, you could have very similar features, or in even certain parts of law and medicine, these kinds of features would carry over. And the results we have were actually really striking. So the blunder potential on a balanced data set gets an accuracy of 73%. And all the features give us 75%. So basically, the blunder potential, that one little fraction on the position, explains pretty much everything. So basically what that's saying is difficulty is the dominant feature. So if you think about driving, this could be true, actually. It could be that like the best drivers on icy roads at night are going to do worse than the worst drivers going like 5 miles an hour in the middle of the desert. So it could be that just difficulty is the main thing that explains when people are going to make mistakes or not. But that should be surprising because I showed you this graph, for example, or in the one versus time, where the blunder rate is actually varying quite a lot with skill. So how can it be that someone who is like rated 2,000 is blundering much less than someone who's rating 1,000, but then my machine learning algorithm is telling me the rating actually doesn't matter? So what I can do is I can split this curve out by the blunder potential. So I can actually kind of explode this one curve into 9 different curves, and where every curve here is controlling for the difficulty of the position. And of course, in one curve, it's still going down with the rating. So better players are playing the same, like similar types of positions better than the worst players are. But the most important part of this graph is that these curves are basically non-overlapping. So if you compare, for example, the top 2 curves, those are positions with 90% blunders versus 80% blunders, which are both just very difficult. But it remains the case that 1,800 players, so the best players in our data, are actually blundering more on the hardest positions than the worst players are blundering on the next hardest positions. So that little bit of difficulty is actually overwhelming this massive gulf in skill. And to give you an idea of how big of a difference 1,800 versus 1,200 is, according to the ELO ratings, an 1,800 rated player is expected to win against a 1,200 rated player 99% of the time, 99 games out of 100. And so we can fix the difficulty of a position, and we can actually go a significant step further. We can fix the exact position itself because we have so much data. And of course, once we do that, you can imagine like lining up, what we actually have in our data is thousands of instances of the exact same configuration of pieces on the board. So you can imagine if you lined up, the exact same position and put different people of different skills and gave them different times. Skill and time does become predictive of whether people are going to start making mistakes or not. And I'll leave you with one last result, and I'm going to introduce a little bit of notation for it. So for a position P, let F sub P of R just be the blunder rate of players of rating R in that position. And say that position is skill monotone if that function is decreasing in R. Okay, so if better players are blundering less, then the position will be skill monotone. And a very natural thing to conjecture is that all positions are skill monotone. And in fact, when we go through our data, we find a super wide variation in F sub P of R. So we find positions of all 3 types that you could feasibly imagine, I think. On the left, indeed, most positions are skill monotone. So the better the players, the less they blunder. But we also see positions that are skill neutral, where this function is not obviously increasing or decreasing in the rating of the players. And we even find skill anomalous positions where the blunder rate actually goes up with the strength of the player. And this has interesting relationships to theories in psych. This has been observed with grade schoolers performing certain kinds of mathematical problems. It turns out that when you're in grade 5 or something, you do well in a certain type of math problem, but when you're in grade 7, you get worse for some reason, then you get better. So this could be a reflection of that. So to summarize, I just want to say that we think this is a new type of AI question that as machines and the algorithms that we design get better and better and actually become dominant over people, we can turn them around, and instead of aiming them at the tasks, we can aim them at people doing the tasks and investigate and let them illuminate human decision making. In the particular context of chess, we find that difficulty dominates. And the extent to which that's surprising, I think, is a reflection of the fundamental attribution error. Like we think the person in a decision-making environment has much more agency than they actually do. Turns out that the environment, at least in chess, is dominant. And we also find an interesting phenomenon of skill anomalous instances, which could carry over into other, more high-stakes environments like driving or medicine or law and so on. And I'll end there. Thanks.
Questions? Yes.
Hi, I have one quick question.
Yeah.
Did you look at the number of moves left to checkmate as a measure of difficulty?
Yeah, we didn't. That is one thing you could do. I think we shied away from it just because the reason why we use that definition of blunder is because it's completely unambiguous whether you made a mistake or not. Like, if you go from winning to like drawing or losing, you definitely made a mistake. But if you went from winning in 15 moves to winning in 20 moves, you arguably made it more difficult on yourself. But actually, there are some positions just where it's easier to play as a person. Like, knowing that you're fallible, you should make this move that, yes, it leads you to a longer checkmate, but it actually makes it much easier for you to play. So it's hard to say that that's actually conceptually a blunder. You could do that.
Yeah, I guess more when you lost, just because I thought that the reason that computers are better at chess is because they can store more memory, right? So they can see further into the future than humans can.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did you find any indication of that? I guess that's why I think the distance to checkmate may show that that's why people are making blunders, is because they can't see far enough into the future.
Yeah, it could be. So, do you mean our definition of blunders, or just whether people?
No, just like why you would lose a game.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, we just use these very simple features. I think there's a lot more to do. I don't think we did what you have in mind, but you definitely could. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Hi. Thanks for a very interesting talk. I had a question about the blunder potential. So if you imagine a situation that like your opponent decides to exchange queens.
Yeah, right.
So I guess your blunder potential would say that it's a very highly high blunder potential, although it's very like obvious that you should recapture the queen in many situations. So do you have any ideas how to develop it?
Yeah, that's a great point. I was going to bring that up, so thanks for asking about it. Yeah, so I guess the question is blunder potential. It's not obvious that the empirical blunder rate should rise in blunder potential, because there are instances in chess where, for example, you just trade material. Someone takes one of your pieces and then you take that other piece back. In that move where you're taking the other piece back, there's really only one move you can make and everything else is a blunder, right? So I think that's why it's surprising that the empirical blunder rate is indeed so regular in the blunder potential, because there are cases like you're mentioning, but I think what overwhelms that phenomenon is just that when there's lots of blunders on the board, it just happens to be hard positions rather than obvious ones. But that's a good question. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. Nice talk. So the graph that you showed where the blunder potential seemed to be increasing as users increase their elo rating, and which you kind of guessed was the same for first graders. Grade school. I think it's correlated to some kind of overconfidence building up over time. I can beat this other guy.
Right.
But on that level, did you consider the opponent's elo ratings, opponent's times?
Right.
In fact, that other thing might be how your data has been collected. Higher rating players typically play higher rated players, not low rated players. Yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, I don't think it explains this particular phenomenon, because these are just individual positions, so it's unclear why it would happen in one position and not another one. But yeah, your main point remains a good one. I think the opponent's rating has a lot to do with it. We did throw it into our classifier. It didn't really help much, but we do want to do further work into like, do opponents steer people into harder positions, and so there's a lot of interesting.
You probably need to measure blood pressure and whatnot to find out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be some great data. Okay, yeah.
Did you look at situations that aren't competitive? It strikes me that we know from algorithmic game theory that the computational complexity of solving games is not trivial.
Yeah.
And that the story you have in your model or the testing assumes that I could make a mistake only in the context of me believing that you would never make a mistake, and you believing that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether you think about the risk of a automatic car making a mistake.
Yeah.
Is it that it hits a stop sign or hits another car?
Yeah.
Did you think? I guess to summarize, did you think about situations that are simpler than a competitive one like chess?
Yeah, that's a great question. We picked chess because it does have all these really nice properties as a model system. But it does have the quirk that it is a competitive environment, and there's an adversary, who actually might have different levels of skill, and you might be responding to that, and so on. So it does have these problems with it. We did think about that. I mean, ideally, what we'd want to do, and what we're trying to do right now, is study something very similar. So it's people solving chess problems. So you just give them one position, and can they find the right move or not? And so it's not a competitive environment. It's just like a problem-solving environment. So that might get around some of these problems. But yeah, I mean, your point is a good one. I think it does have these issues with it. Yeah.
Let's take one more question.
Sure.
Thanks for the talk.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a chess player. Checkers is more my speed, maybe. But it really goes on to that question. Your blunder rate is defined according to perfect play. So as I understand it, chess is solved to 7 places, assuming perfect play of the opponent.
Yeah.
And at a very high level, though, there's only 10 really good people in chess.
Yeah, right.
You would think that they all know each other in their particular style of play.
Yeah.
So maybe what seems like a blunder to the computer would actually be giving that opponent the right move. You're forcing them to make some error you think that they might make.
Right.
So have you considered doing just a match against the computer or a double blind match to take out this source of error?
Yeah, that would be super interesting. So I think our definition of blunder in these positions that are super sparse, because there are only 6 pieces or fewer, you would never, I think, intentionally make a blunder, what we're calling a blunder, like going to a drawn endgame in the hopes that you're going to win because you have so many wins on the board. So I don't think people intentionally are doing that. If you define blunder a little bit differently, like for example using chess engines, this would be a real problem because people are well known to engage in what's called what you said. It's called speculative play. So like even in our simple scenarios that we're studying, there are a lot of moves that are equivalent to an engine. So that the optimization landscape is super flat. It's like all these 9 moves to an engine are equivalent, but to humans they're really not. Like some might pose the opponent a lot more challenges than others. So I think that's a good point. I don't think it actually comes up in our setting just because our blunder is so such an intense definition, but it would come up in very similar scenarios. But yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's thank the speaker again.